Well, concern continues to mount about the future of school boards and trustees in this province as the Education Minister considers changes that could shift more power to Queen's Park. Former Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne served as Minister of Education, and before that was a school board trustee in Toronto. She joins me live now. Such a pleasure to have you, Ms. Wynne. Thank you for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
The Education Minister is considering a province-wide overhaul of the way school boards are run in this province. What immediate concerns do you have about that?
Well, first of all, I think that if there is to be a review of the role of school trustees, then there should be a conversation. And what I'm worried about right now is that the minister is going to be making unilateral decisions that really are not in the best interest of kids. Because that's what's at the heart of this, is what's in the best interest of kids. And from my perspective, having been a school trustee and having watched the system as a minister and then as premier, it seems to me that local accountability is very, very important for two reasons. The first one is that families often need, and kids often need, some support in navigating the system and making sure they get their needs met. And secondly, school trustees over time have developed policies in different parts of the province that have then been adopted to the benefit of all kids in the province by the provincial government. Things like full-day kindergarten, things like, eco-schools and safe schools policies. Those are policies that were developed locally, and then they were adopted provincially. So I think it's a bad idea to get rid of school trustees.
The province's argument they say that the impetus for this is that there are some trustees who misspend and no amount of public funding should be misused. I think in the most recent case, a trustee with the Toronto Catholic District School Board is accused of spending almost $7,000 on electronics. I don't suppose you defend that, but what can or should change to prevent something like that? Well,
first of all, if that equipment was equipment that that trustee needed to do his job, and
it was like Apple Watches.
Yeah.
Apple
so I'm not. I'm not going to defend spending that was frivolous, but there's a component of that might have been for his job. But the things that were not, and where there was spending that shouldn't have happened, no, I'm not going to defend that, and I don't think anybody would defend that. But having said that, there is that kind of behavior from time to time at every level of government. So if that happens on a city council, we don't say, let's get rid of city council. If that happens on the part of an MPP or an MP, we don't say, let's get rid of the Ontario legislature, let's get rid of the Canadian government. It's a ridiculous sort of extrapolation from one example of bad behavior, if indeed it was bad behavior. And there has been misspending by some boards around the province, just as there has been of councils and legislatures and the federal government. So I think that this is not about that. I think this is an agenda that's based in an ideology, like not a belief in the public school board system. And I think that the minister is also interested in the real estate that is owned by all of these school boards. There's a huge amount of land that's owned by the 72 school boards in the province. And I think that the minister is interested in having control of that land at the provincial level. That's not a reason to get rid of local accountability. There should be a discussion, and school trustees, families, students should be consulted.
I know our time is limited, so if you don't mind, I do want to switch gears a little bit. I do want to get your perspective as the Ontario Liberals now look to launch their third leadership race since 2018. I wonder if you have any advice for the party as it continues a really difficult rebuild.
Well, I think that there are lots of good people who are interested in running for the leadership. It will be a positive process. I mean, having gone through it myself, I know that the leadership race will mean that the candidates travel the province, talk to Liberals in every corner of Ontario, and that's a really positive thing to have happen. Would we have preferred not to have to go into a leadership at this moment? For sure, but it is in front of us, and so we'll have a constructive experience.
Do you think the party needs to have some sort of debate about its identity?
No. I don't. I think that there are strong values that underpin the Ontario Liberal Party. We're talking about publicly funded education. You know, I was just at that annual general meeting, and there was a really robust conversation about what needs to happen in publicly funded education, which has been neglected by this government. So on that issue and on so many others, we understand as Ontario Liberals what we stand for, and so that's what will be talked about during a leadership race, and that, quite frankly, is healthy for the party.
How does the party, though, stay competitive headed into the next election? Because while those are important issues, they didn't exactly resonate with most Ontarians.
No, and you know, the fact is that this was an unusual election, the last election. We were in the middle of the issues around the trade war with the United States. It was the middle of winter. It was a snap election that was called. All those factors played into it. But the reality is that the people of Ontario care about the institutions of this province, and the Ontario Liberals will be competitive because we, you know, although we're the third party, we have the second highest share of the popular vote, and we know that at some point, there's going to be a real question about the way Doug Ford is governing this province. He's kind of hidden behind the trade war with the United States, and he's kind of donned that Captain Canada cape. But the reality is that there are lots of things happening at home in terms of healthcare and education and the environment, the green belt, things that he doesn't want to talk about. And those are the things that need to be talked about going into the next election.
Okay, former Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne, really appreciate your perspective this morning. Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much.